All right, Tamara, you want to do it or you want me to do it?
Either one.
Okay.
I guess I can start.
Okay.
Welcome everybody to our strategy session. Today we're going to be going over our mission, vision, and values statements. Again, we've received a lot of feedback from our community members, and so we're going to go over that. And we're also going to update on our outreach findings from Amy and Sarah. Then we have a draft regional strategy review, Amy and Sarah as well, and then our next steps and announcements.
And special welcome to the leaders or the chairs of our committees. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We thought it would be nice to have you represent all of the folks that are working so hard out in our community every day. So thank you for being here. I know it would be helpful for me if they could just introduce themselves and tell us what committee they represent.
Great. And just really quickly as a housekeeping reminder, because we are posting on YouTube, we are not to put anything in the chat that because we need to show everyone in the public. So we'll just, if you have anything you'd like to share, you can send it to me and I'd be happy to blast it out. Thank you so much. Yes, and as Ryan said, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Matthew Kelly and from Mercy Care, and I'm representing the Coordinated Entry Subcommittee.
Thank you.
Stephanie Smith from Native American Connections. I'm the co-chair for COC committee.
Thank you.
And I'm Jennifer Jangerman from Native American Connections, and I co-chair the data subcommittee.
Thank you. Welcome.
Rachel Milne from Maricopa County, and I lead the ESG subcommittee.
Thanks, Rachel. Is that everybody from our committees?
Oh.
Did we also want to do board introductions, or do we not need to do that today, Sarah?
Either way, we don't need to take quorum, but we can if you'd like, or we can just dive in.
I think we can just dive in. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much, chairs, for your introduction. We will now toss it over to the awesome Jim King to go over our draft mission, vision, and values. I will share my screen.
Hi, good morning, everybody. It's been a little bit of a while since I've participated with you. I think I've missed a meeting or two. I apologize. I've had an interesting month of recovery from a concussion, but I am back to 80 or 90%. I will only say if I say something really weird or off the wall today, I can blame it and have an excuse. But I'm glad to be back. And thank you, Mag, for having me to help sort of facilitate this process. So we started, a number of months ago on this mission, vision, values, strategy, goal journey. We've been working, and you all have been working a ton. And this is not an easy process. It's a tiring process. You have spent a lot of time, I think, rethinking how the COC can position itself, structure itself to be more effective going forward. And I applaud all the work that's been done. So what I'm hopeful today, based upon what my understanding from talking to the MAG staff, is we're close to having a mission and a vision and values that we really feel good about. And what this agenda item today is wanting to revisit it, maybe for the last time. We think we have a 90-95% solution, but we want to look at it one last time here with the goal that a week from today, is it a week from today? When is, I think it's a week from today. No, when is the board meeting, the actual board meeting?
It's going to be Monday.
Monday. Oh, well then, shoot. We have really got to make sure this ink is dry then by Monday, because we would like to take it, and the recommendation, the suggestion has been taking it to the board meeting on Monday for approval. We need to vote on that. So we would vote on the mission, vision, and value statement that this group has come up with. So having said all that, I thought we would go through these statements, let anybody comment, give thumbs up, clap, whatever you want. Just think, hey, we're close, or we got it, we love it. If there's any other suggestions or input that might improve it, that's great too. And then secondly, we did get a lot of stakeholder feedback. So the group had suggested taking it out to stakeholders, whether that's providers or our systems, law enforcement, people with lived experiences. So we've got a ton of feedback that has been collected, that's been sent to all of you. I hope you have looked at it and read it, and it's been affirming, I hope. And if it's not been affirming, then here's another data point to use of something that we might have got an aha or some idea that maybe we want to incorporate in the mission, vision, value statements that we've created. Okay, so that is background. Sarah, could we go back? And I'm just going to kind of read through the vision and then ask for comment, questions, or anything that anyone wants to add to this statement. Our vision is a region free of racial disparities and other inequities where all people have a safe place to call home. All right, I'm going to open that up to comments by anybody.
Jim, quick piece of clarification. The way that we're reviewing them now are the way they went out for feedback, correct?
Sarah, is that right? Yep, I see.
Yeah, so they went out, and the only newest addition is the lived experience part that we just received. So that will be all new information for all of us.
So my suggestion would be that the goal today is to look at the feedback and incorporate it in. Is that the goal?
Yeah, I mean,
yes.
we clearly want to take that in. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Wanted to be sure.
With that suggestion, do you want to go to the stakeholder feedback? I mean, there's a lot of comments. So I will ask the group, do you want to spend time today going over that on the call or collectively reading through them? Or would we prefer to have that reviewed offline in the next couple days? However you like to go through it, however would be helpful for you all.
And sorry, just to quickly clarify, the approval of the mission, vision, and values isn't until the May meeting. So we do have some time, and sorry for that.
Thank you.
That confusion. We've got some.
So this is Jackie, and I can't find the feedback. I did have my agenda, but the community feedback, I am not finding that, and I don't know if I accidentally deleted it or what. I would like it if we could go back and have some time to consider that. And I don't know if it would even be feasible to organize that feedback. And maybe it is because I don't have the document by specific feedback on the vision specific. Is it organized like that?
Yes, it is. And I'd be happy to send it out again. Absolutely.
If I'm the only one, Sarah, you can send it now. I'll pull it up while we're meeting. So
I also did not receive it, Jackie. So that's actually was my comment just right now as well. So
I think we had discussed, Sarah, in agenda planning that perhaps the mission, vision, values group would come together one more time before the board meeting to incorporate the feedback so that we could have a vote at the May board meeting.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
But that we wanted to give an opportunity to the full board, including our chairs of the committees, to just take a look at the feedback and let us know if anything stands out, get some input. Does anything jump out at people as, yes, we should include this, or here's a good place where we can include this, but that we do want to bring the revised pieces up for vote in May.
Mm-hmm. And MAC staff, is it okay with public meeting law if I put this document into the invite right now for everybody to open? Or
Sarah, as long as it's posted online, we just need to make sure, because the board wants to operate as transparently and as inclusively as possible. So we just need to make sure that any substantive discussion, whether that's in chat or any materials that are provided, the public has full access to that information. So as long as this information is also on the MAG website, then yes, absolutely.
If you're all okay with me posting this on the MAG page for all the public to see, there isn't any information here that has anyone's name or anything like that. So if that's okay, I will do that now.
And then Sarah, just wanted to read, there is a comment in the chat asking about the deadline to provide comments, and was the deadline to provide comments tomorrow? Can you clarify
initially,
that? Okay.
The first sweep of feedback, the deadline is tomorrow.
So I think what happened is that we had thought we could potentially meet before today to try to run by the board a new and improved version, but I'm just not sure we got to that yet. So I think we still need to do that piece of work.
So it sounds like maybe we need to have that mission vision group meet, take the stakeholder feedback, take another subgroup review of it, and then kind of ask the rest of the board question, are we there? What do you think? Is that, Brian, is that what you're thinking?
That's what I'm thinking. Unless
Okay.
we get through the rest of the agenda and have extra time, then I think we could use that time to sort through it. But I know that if we start with this, it will be the whole agenda.
Yeah.
Because we all like to wordsmith.
Okay. Sarah, would that be okay? So that we will hold or try to schedule another call. That group will see all the stakeholder feedback in advance. So that is one of the, I think, assignments, is to make sure you read and sort of digest that. There's a lot of good information. It's a lot of affirmation, by the way, and not, that's the good thing. I think that there's a lot of comments that are affirming, like the direction that was given. So that's a good thing. But that you would read that, and then we would come to that subgroup and work it a little bit more. And then when would we come back then, Sarah, for the larger group? Is that next week we would have to do that on the 29th?
Well, it really depends, if folks are ready to approve it at the May board meeting, anytime between there. So what I will do is I will send out a doodle to everybody, just seeing when you're all available. And if you'd prefer to meet an hour and a half, how that would work. I can get that set as quickly as next week, the week after, because I know we want to move quickly gathering all of that feedback. And as Jim said, there's so much affirming feedback, especially from those with lived experience. Very, very precious. So yes, however you'd like to proceed with that, I'll send out a doodle here pretty quick, and we'll just get it done.
Okay. So with that sort of takeaway, and we've checked off the box at how we're going to handle that, then we should probably move on to Amy on the outreach findings.
Okay, I will stop sharing my screen, David.
Great, thanks. Thank you very much, Jim. And David, if we can please pull up the outreach findings PowerPoint, please, that would be great. Just want to make sure, so this is part of our continuing efforts, and really our priority to make sure that the board is fully engaged in these regional efforts right now. So really appreciate any feedback that you might have. We have an update for this item on the outreach that's been conducted to date, and then the next item will focus in more specifically on the strategies, and really hoping to get feedback from the board on those strategies as this work unfolds. So David, if we can go to the next slide, please. So then the topics that we'll be covering as part of this agenda item then are to bring you up to speed on the forums that have been conducted, the surveys, and then Sarah will be talking and sharing some really exciting news about the Persons with Lived Experience Advisory Council. But would love to have your feedback, your questions throughout this presentation. Next slide, please. And this is just to recenter us a bit, because there is so much going on right now. And so just wanted to take a moment to bring this up in front of our eyes again, that the focus of all of this work right now with the efforts to strengthen the region's response to homelessness is this. It's really to provide more coordination, to take a truly regional approach that offers opportunities for every community to be involved, and then to develop strategies in 5 basic categories. And that includes housing, temporary housing, which would include shelter, as well as extend beyond more traditional emergency shelter. Certainly looking at services, again, that coordination, and then diversion and prevention. And the three main things that we're wanting to do with all of this work then is one, absolutely to reduce the numbers of people who are experiencing homelessness, to increase access to those homeless assistance programs throughout the entire region, really expanding that geographic footprint of homeless assistance programs, housing, shelter, and services. And then to strengthen the safety net for all people. And particularly that third point, it's strengthening that safety net. So very much looking at diversion and prevention, but also really emphasizing all people, and that we understand that we have racial inequities right now, and that we need to address those, particularly if we're wanting to move forward in really reducing the numbers of people experiencing homelessness. We really need to look hard and close at the reasons why people are experiencing homelessness. And at times that's due to racial inequities. Next slide, please. And just again, as a reminder, to put it in front of us, this is the general kind of roadmap for how we've been undertaking this work. This is the general process. So we started off really by embedding this work, using a foundation for this work in terms of the 300 plus different local strategies. And those local strategies, some of those come from approved plans that the cities, towns, and counties have. Other strategies were identified from the local communities as a priority, and some even more as an aspiration to say, this is what we would like to do moving forward in order to address homelessness. So we started off really with that local, really good, solid work. And then from there, we looked at what's the best of what's occurring right now across the country, wanting to learn from the best practices locally as well as nationally, so we might be able to bring some new ideas into the region. From there, we developed an initial portfolio that included about 40 different strategies. Some were true strategies, others were more kind of tactics or ideas. And so from there, we're able to identify the 14 highest priority strategies on the basis of the outreach as well as the research. And those were further filtered and really further fleshed out by 5 regional goals, including things like expanding the geographic footprint, things like that. And then all of this then is coming into the culmination of a regional portfolio. Now the board will have the opportunity to take action on that regional portfolio at your meeting next month. And so we want to make sure that we have this touch point with you just to make sure that everyone has had an opportunity and multiple opportunities really to help shape this work, to help guide it. And at your meeting on Monday, we have Homebase coming in to give a bit more detailed analysis on the research that has been conducted to date. And so the purpose of this really is to focus in on the outreach. Next slide, please. This is the overall timeline in which this work has been taking place. We started ramping up these regional efforts last fall, and it very, very quickly started conducting that outreach as well as some initial research. We're right in the middle right now of fine-tuning those regional strategies, understanding what are the tactics that would help to further those strategies. And then beginning in June, on June 10th, then having a capstone event, we'll absolutely invite all of you, hope that you'll be able to attend, where we will use that event as a launch point for the implementation plan development. And so we'll bring together all of the people from the board, from anyone who's attended any one of the 10 different forums that we've held, as well as these strategy sessions to help us put into place plans for who's doing what by when, and really critically where. That geographic footprint of all of this work is critically important in these efforts. Next slide, please. So this brings us to the outreach portion. We've held 10 different forums, and next slide, please. We've reached more than 700 people just with these forums. We've conducted a whole range of different forums, because homelessness, of course, is not created by any one sector, nor can it be solved by any one sector. And so we wanted to make sure that we were reaching out to diverse audiences. The very first forum actually was with the leadership from the nonprofit agencies, because we very much wanted to ground this work in the deep expertise of the nonprofit agencies that are offering shelter and services and different programs. And so that's why we started with the nonprofit community, and then from there reached out to housing leaders, business leaders, the faith community, also making sure that we touch base with the domestic violence community, which we're able to do through ACES-DV, and we thank them for hosting that forum for us. Also reaching out to the philanthropic, to the foundations who are in this region. They're very eager to assist, and they're wanting to support these efforts. And then from there, just recently, at the end of March, we conducted our staff forum with the cities, towns, and counties, because all of these strategies will need to be implemented in communities. So it's critically important to engage the communities to make sure that they're on board, and that these regional plans represent and respond to their local priorities. And then we just had our elected official forum last week. It was an amazing event where you had the mayors, the council members, the vice mayors from throughout the region really speaking of their commitment to addressing this issue. So it was very important to hear from them and to be able to know that we're all moving together in that same direction. And we do have that capstone event planned now for June 10th from 2 to 4. We will have an invitation going out for that very soon. And we do hope that all of you will be able to join us. Next slide, please. These are some of the questions that we've been asking in all of these different forums. And so each agenda was set really very customized to that specific sector, but then there are some universal trends and questions that we're asking in some way, shape, or form in each of these different forums. Wanting to ask what kinds of programs are needed and where, what's working really well, what's not working well, what's needed, and then what are the greatest priorities for taking action. Next slide, please. We have also conducted a whole range of different surveys. At times, it maybe wasn't as feasible or appropriate to conduct a forum. And so we reached out with surveys and have had a fantastic response. We've reached, gosh, more than what, 600, 700 people actually just through surveys. So the first one, and Sarah will be talking a little bit about how we're moving forward with the input received from persons with lived experience. Fantastic response. People really want to be involved. And we're really looking intently at how to incorporate the voices of people with lived experience in a meaningful way throughout all of this work. We also conducted surveys with law enforcement and with first responders. Again, not maybe as feasible to have a forum with them because they're needed out in the field so much. So we conducted surveys, had a fantastic response, and that's really helping to guide our work very specifically with these strategies, as well as ongoing coordination and partnerships that can come about with these two sectors in particular. We surveyed all of the forum participants to give them another opportunity and chance to weigh in on those questions that were discussed, as well as to learn from them what can we be doing better or what should we continue doing with these forums. And then we sent out a survey to all of the forum participants to have them help weigh in on their top 3 priority strategies. Next slide, please. We'll be using the survey data then to help really refine those regional strategies, using them as another data point to help us better understand what are the most viable actions right now that we can take as a region. We're also looking very intently at regional programs that can move forward on an ongoing basis. Right now, some communities have very good misdemeanor repeat offender programs. There might be opportunities, for example, to regionalize that work and to help provide that capacity and consistency throughout the region. And then also, again, Sarah will be talking about this in just a moment, really looking at persons with lived experience and how can we meaningfully integrate their perspective by having an advisory council, and that meeting has been set. Next slide, please. Again, so these are just some of the top priorities and things that we've heard from all of this feedback. First, we've heard a great interest, not just in addressing homelessness for people who are experiencing it right now, but for preventing it in the first place. We know that when the moratorium is eventually lifted on evictions, we may face a whole flood of people becoming homeless, many of them possibly for the first time. We want to be ready. We want to divert them from entering the system. It's more cost effective, it's more humane, and it represents a great area of opportunity for the region. We want to continue the great work that's been undertaken by the board and by the Continuum of Care over the past year to address those racial inequities that are present in the system and to make sure that we're addressing those throughout all of this regional planning. We want to strengthen our coordination partnerships throughout all of this work. And we do understand that there is a need to be able to offer assistance immediately. We're hearing, for example, that even rapid rehousing isn't rapid enough. People can't wait 2 weeks. We need to get them into some form of housing today, even if it's just temporary. And we need to expand the number of options for that throughout the region. Next slide, please. Also want to highlight, this is the ongoing communication that we've been undertaking on a regular basis through all of this work. Hearing from you about what your priorities are is critical to this work moving forward in a responsive, coordinated way. And so these are just some of the examples that we're undertaking right now to make sure that we have the benefit of your expertise. And we look forward to continuing this dialogue with you during your meeting on Monday, as well as hearing what you might have to offer today. Next slide, please. So at this point, I'd love to turn it over to Sarah to offer an update in terms of the plans for the Persons with Lived Experience Advisory Council. What I presented are some of the outreach forums and the survey findings. The survey findings lead directly into our activity and our direction moving forward with Persons with Lived Experience. Sarah, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Amy. Appreciate that. Yes, so wonderful news as the board has approved the racial equity work in the 4 main areas. And just to recap, the 4 main action areas out of the racial equity work that were highlighted and board approved were data, coordinated entry, lived experience, and workforce. And so the lived experience portion is what I am going to talk about here today. So great news. As you all know, a survey went out a couple weeks ago to folks with lived experience to ask them various questions around what's working, what's not working. And thank you to those folks who took a look at the survey and gave me your feedback. Very much appreciated. So we received almost 200 responses out of that survey. And out of that, over 50% of people want to participate in planning efforts to end homelessness. And gave me their contact information. So we've reached out to them. And wow, we've had a lot of folks who are interested. So the first meeting is set for Friday, April 23rd from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. But what we quickly realized is because we had so much interest from the survey, the majority of folks for this first meeting are those with current lived experience. And so this first meeting is going to be more of a meet and greet type, not an official council, because really it's up to folks with lived experience to tell us how they want to participate. So some of the agenda topics for that first meeting, 1 second, please, are really just to pick their brains, right, about how they want to participate. And so, of course, intros and icebreakers, that's going to start us off. And when the next agenda item is a courageous conversation. We really want to help folks to know that they are in a safe place to share. And then also we will open it up to what the meeting is about, how it first came from the racial equity work and the 4 areas, things like that. And then we're going to get their opinions on what interests them in joining today. And then we're going to also talk about what are some barriers for them to be able to participate long-term, because we understand on a real level that folks need childcare or pet care or various things like that. Also, incentives for recruitment. That is something that we're working on ongoing because we understand that folks really are giving us their valuable time and their expertise. So we want to honor that. So any ideas that folks have around possible ideas around incentives, we're always open ears for that. Also technology barriers. We know that this first meeting is through the phone, through Microsoft Teams, and a lot of folks may not have access to that. So some of the hard work that we're going to start doing is really how can we allow more access to people with partnerships out in the community. And so if someone right now is listening that does have a computer lab that they would like to have folks borrow for this, please let me know. That would be really wonderful. Aside from that, also we're going to be asking them how they want to help participate in the regional strategy development. We're going to have home base come in and give a presentation so folks with lived experience have the opportunity to really give their input. Because there were so many folks that wanted to participate, we felt like we needed to have 2 meet and greets. This first one is going to be majority of folks with current lived experience. And then the second one will be folks will be reaching out to providers and folks who have ended their homelessness to also ask them the same agenda questions. And then after those 2 meet and greets, we'll bring everybody together for our official first meeting. We're working very closely with partners and stakeholders who also want to participate in this work. So thank you everyone who has sent me really great messages and being really excited about this. It is very exciting, and we're looking for help in any ways that we can. And that there is the long, short update of the first meet and greet lived experience council meeting.
Thank you, Sarah. Jack is asking, can you please give the time and dates for those 2 meetings?
We only have the 1 meeting set right now because we want to we'll have the second one in about 2 weeks. So as soon as we have that, as soon as the action planning team decides on that second date, but the first date is Friday, April 23rd from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m.
Great, thank you.
Mhm. Yep.
Does anyone have any guidance or questions that you might like to share in regards to how we can really meaningfully integrate and include persons with lived experience in the activities of the board, the committees, the subcommittees, the work groups? It'd be great to get your feedback now, because then we can bring that to the meeting on Friday and see how they might be able to respond to that. So I know that this has been a priority for the board, and would love to have any thoughts that you might be able to share on that at this time.
So hi, this is Matt. Quick question, like as part of the discussion, will there be conversation surrounding what some of those volunteer opportunities might look like, whether it's participating in some of the other subcommittees or the COC committee or whatever that may be? How is that kind of formatted?
Absolutely. And so this first step is really to ask them how they want to participate, but also to educate them on, the things that we know about, the structure of the COC and things like that, and the different areas of leadership that they are welcome to participate in. So I think this meet and greet portion is going to be really important for us, just to really pick their brains and see who else needs to be invited to the table before proceeding. I've had some feedback from folks say, yeah, are we going to develop a charter? Are we creating mission, vision, and values? So people are really excited to create this from the bottom up. And so really we're in the development phase, the beginning stages of this. We're also learning about what folks prefer and what they want to see as far as this council. And even funny enough, I'm receiving feedback that folks say, I'm not sure if I like the name. I'm not sure if I like the Lived Experience Advisory Council name, because Advisory Council applies that there's already shared power, and that's something that we're working on. And so being that we're in the beginning phases, we might even change the name. So that's a really great question, Matthew. But yes, we're open, to see how folks want to participate and how they'd like to be weaved into what we've got in place right now, and grow from it, of course.
Sarah, thank you so much for reporting out and on the great work that you're doing with the Advisory Council. Wanted to comment or read out a comment from the chat from Jackie Taylor that she says she'll check on availability of the Career Center computers and get back to us. So thank you so much, Jackie, for that comment. We appreciate you checking in on that.
Thank you so much. And also a shout out to the city of Avondale, as they're offering their computer lab for this Friday as well. So yes, we're very much open to continued ongoing partnerships, with the goal, of course, of meeting in person as soon as we can, but also keeping in mind that vaccines and things are also going to be important. And so working with Circle the City to see if they may be able to pull their vaccine van up and help us out down the road when we're able to meet in person. So really great things are happening. And if any of this that we've talked about interests you, whether you'd like to help in any capacity, please reach out to me. The more help, the merrier.
Thanks so much, Sarah. Really appreciate all of your efforts with this. Does anyone have any questions about the outreach forums, the surveys, the council? Any questions, any feedback?
Hi, it's Jennifer. 2 questions. How in all of this process are you evaluating the feedback within an equitable process? So your slide on surveys shows that you got 280 surveys from law enforcement and only 160 from people with lived experience. That's the potential for a pretty big skew on. And then also, how did you purposefully outreach and engage the communities who were impacted by the largest disparities? So within that list of all the people, the groups, and forever that you had, how did you know you got overrepresentation probably from the Black community, Native community, individuals with disabilities, people with serious mental illness? so that you had feedback loops from the people most impacted?
No, Jennifer, thanks so much. That's a great question. And maybe 2 points of clarification. One, these were not scientifically valid surveys. These are strictly around outreach, which is why we're talking about them in terms of outreach and not research. So we didn't do representative sampling in this. It's really to bring in the voices of people who are somehow stakeholders in this work. And then in terms of your question then, and you're exactly right, we had more survey responses back from law enforcement and first responders than we did from people with lived experience. Those were 2 totally separate surveys. We're asking about different things, and those 2 surveys were conducted for different reasons. With law enforcement and first responders, we're asking more specifically about what did they see as their role in addressing homelessness. With people with lived experience, it was much more around, and perhaps Sarah, if you can talk a little bit about some of the questions from that survey, but we weren't asking people with lived experience specifically about how they saw the role of law enforcement and first responders. It was much more around how they might want to be involved in these efforts. What do they need? We're able to pull out different data points. Like, I think, was it rental assistance was the most difficult benefit to receive. So it's much more so looking from their individual perspective, which is why we're not comparing the number of results. In terms of your question about kind of oversampling then to ensure that we're hearing from people that are disproportionately affected by homelessness, again, it's not a scientific effort. It's much more around coordination and being able to hear from specific populations. And the Persons with Lived Experience survey was much more focused on kind of that racial equity lens and to make sure that we're hearing from populations in that regard. So this is, these efforts were one way that we could reach out to really more so specifically different sectors. And we're looking at it through more of a profession lens or a sector lens, and not so much in terms of making sure that we had different demographics represented in a scientific manner, if that makes sense.
Yes, and to piggyback off what Amy said, this is for folks with lived experience. This is one of many surveys that is going out because we always want to make sure that we're checking in with them. But this survey specifically was, as Amy said, what would be most helpful for you right now in ending your homelessness? Please choose. A, shelter, B, tent, housing, hotel vouchers. And then some, in your own words, what are the 3 most important things to end your homelessness? But really, this also was our first recruitment tool as well, to say, hey, who might be interested in helping us plan ways to end homelessness? Please give us your contact here. So this is first of many. And then also part of this survey was to get their feedback, of course, on the vision, mission, and values. So
Right.
got some great results there.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, Jennifer, for that question. And those are definitely important things to keep in mind if at some point we're wanting to do more of a scientifically valid survey, and we'll definitely need to make sure that we keep the demographics in mind at that point. Other questions, comments? Okay. Well, hopefully June 10th from 2 to 4, you can all put that on your calendars. We'd love to have you come out and join us for the Capstone event. At that time, we will launch the development of the implementation plan process. And we very much want to make sure that we're including your perspectives in that and to have you really help shape and move that work forward. So I think that'll be a critical component of all of this. And do want to thank both Ryan and Tamara for speaking at the municipal staff forum for Ryan and then the elected official forum for Tamara. It was important to make sure that we have really that alignment and participation by the board and throughout all of these efforts. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so that'll wrap up item number 3. Madam Chairs, would you like to go on to item number 4 then? Yes, all right. David, if you don't mind, please bringing up the PowerPoint for the strategy update. So we have, as mentioned in the previous presentation, we've developed 14 different strategies and research, and our national consultant Homebase will be providing you more information about the research and the analysis that's been conducted in response to these regional efforts since last fall. And if we can go to the next slide, please. On the basis of the outreach and research, we've developed these regional strategies for immediate implementation, but we still need to define the tactics within each one. So this work is very much still in draft form, and that's why we're here today, because we want to have the benefit of your expertise, your perspective, to really help shape this work as it moves forward. Next slide, please. So each of these 14 different strategies are included in one of these 5 categories. And these are mentioned in the previous presentation as well, but just wanted to put these in front of us as a way of understanding how we're organizing this work moving forward. Next slide, please. These are all of the 14 different strategies. You'll see that we have all 4 steps from the racial equity plan that the board developed recently. We have all 4 of those steps from the action plan fully integrated into these 14 different strategies. 3 out of the 4 are included in coordination. And then the 4th one then is under services with enhancing the coordinated entry system. And so with each of these different categories, we're delving into these right now, working with subject matter experts. A number of members of the board have participated in strategy sessions where we've been diving into these strategies, fleshing them out more, and then starting to develop some tactics that could be considered for implementation as we move forward with that element of the process in June. So you'll see two strategies under diversion and prevention. We have 4 under housing. We have a number under coordination. 3 out of 4 deal with racial equity. The 4th one then is really building those cross-sector relationships with other systems such as law enforcement, the criminal justice system, healthcare, education. We are planning outreach right now to the education community that can help us to inform what the tactics, particularly in this area, would look like. Also looking at services then, continuing with enhancing the coordinated entry system. We just had a session on that yesterday, and there's a lot of opportunity really to fine tune our coordinated entry process and really considering it as a full process beyond any one agency. Also looking at employment assistance, making sure that when people are experiencing homelessness, that they have every opportunity to be able to gain really viable employment that pays a living wage that can help them to break that, to end their experience of being homeless. And then shelter, which has been expanded to be reframed as temporary housing, because there are a number of different ways to immediately meet the needs of people who are experiencing homelessness in terms of offering shelter. And that can be traditional shelter, it can be bridge housing, rapid rehousing. So we're looking at a number of different strategies, including relatively maybe newer ones like shared housing. And then strengthening that regional response to unsheltered homelessness and building up a regional system of local shelters to make sure that people have the opportunity to stabilize more quickly, and people tend to be able to do so when they're still in their home community. And so even when people lose their home, they still have a community that they consider to be their home community. And so we want to make sure that they can stabilize more quickly to their employment, to their friends, family, faith, community, and to the healthcare that they've come to know and trust over the years. So really approaching that work from that regional approach. Next slide, please. From here, we'll just go quickly into each of these strategies and then really want to spend the majority of our time then hearing from you in terms of 3 main questions. The first of those to consider as we review these different strategies is which one would be your highest priority? How would you define success for these priorities? And then are we missing anything? Understanding that there's a lot of work to be done in a number of different areas. Some of that work will be clarified and really be addressed more in depth through the tactics, but we want to make sure that we have the most important ideas in mind as we move forward with this work, and the input from the board is really critical to that. So under diversion and prevention, just want to note that this isn't always necessarily included in traditional homeless initiatives, but it's a really key element and a priority for the community. We've been hearing through a number of different people through outreach and as well as through research that we need to make sure that we're paying attention to this. And so looking at rental assistance, for example, really important. We have some great opportunities right now, particularly given the increased levels of funding that are coming into the region. Next slide, please. Housing. We absolutely need to make sure that we have this as an area of focus. We're particularly interested in making sure that housing is not just affordable, but it's attainable, it's sustainable for the long term, particularly for people with extremely low incomes. Making sure that we're coordinating our COVID relief funding. Maricopa County, Phoenix, Mesa, a number of communities are working together really well right now We want to see if there's opportunities to enhance those efforts, to support those efforts, particularly in looking at year 2 of the ARPA funding. We know that a lot of this funding, particularly that's COVID related, has been spent. If it's not been spent, it's perhaps been allocated, but every dollar of it, whether in hand or on the way, is very much in high demand. And so there might be some opportunities to achieve some economies of scale by coordinating all of those efforts. The Arizona Coalition on Housing, the Arizona Housing Coalition and others have been doing some really important work around landlord engagement. We know that some communities have vouchers that they aren't able to fill, and it's because we need to recruit more landlords. And so looking at some very focused activities that could be done to support the local efforts and to be able to offer some additional support through regional efforts in that space. An idea that has been rising to the top pretty consistently is how can we complement the existing flexible funding pools that we already have here in the region, and is there a need to create another one? And so we're surveying the local landscape of flexible funding pools and seeing if there might be a need and opportunity then to supplement their great work and possibly create a new one if that's what's needed. We're hearing that there are barriers to people ending their homelessness that just aren't funded by anybody right now. And so, for example, we're hearing that it's a lot more difficult to have refundable move-in deposits funded as opposed to the non-refundable. There are funding sources right now for the non-refundable move-in deposits, but not necessarily for the ones that can be refunded when somebody leaves that housing unit. And so it's things like that. Another example of things that aren't funded as readily or as easily. For example, if there's someone, usually an older adult living on a fixed income who gets behind with their HOA payments, the HOA can legally put a lien on their house. And we're hearing about older adults who own their homes outright but are losing that housing because of the liens that are placed on them. And so we want to make sure that there are funding sources available in all cases to help people from entering that homeless system in the first place. Next slide, please. Moving on to coordination, again, 3 out of 4 come directly from the racial equity plan that the board just approved recently. And so we're continuing to work with racial equity partners as an incredible resource. Julie Montoya on our staff has been providing great leadership in this, as has Samantha Jackson from Downtown Phoenix Partnership and Nikki Stevens currently with the City of Tempe. And so really excited to be able to continue that work and to really fully integrate that work into these regional efforts. And then coordinating and building those cross-sector relationships with other systems. We have some really good opportunities to do that and wanting to deepen the coordination that's underway right now and to launch new partnerships as needed. Next slide, please. And then services. We have some good opportunities to enhance the great work that's being done right now through the coordinated entry system. We're hearing, for example, interest in increasing the number of entry points throughout the region to be able to increase that availability. And then also looking at the screening tool. So the VI SPDAT, we're hearing some room for fine tuning there, perhaps even a new tool. We want to be able to undertake these conversations in very, very close coordination with the board, really to have you help drive those efforts and any policy changes that might be needed as a result. So this is a great example of an area of purview that's squarely within the board's role and an area where we really hope to support you and to support some enhancements in that area. And then again, looking at employment, making sure that we're looking at transitional jobs as well as jobs that people might hold for the long term, all of which hopefully will contribute very positively to their self-sufficiency. Next slide, please. And then temporary housing and shelter. We're hearing a lot of interest in providing more bridge housing throughout the region and really using that as a good stepping stone to help people access those more permanent housing solutions. And then again, strengthening that regional response to unsheltered homelessness and providing more opportunities for people to receive shelter right in their home community as opposed to going to another community because that's where the shelter happens to be offered. Next slide, please. And at this point, David, you can take down the PowerPoint. Thank you for that. I'd love to open up the floor and just to see if you have any questions, any feedback on those draft strategies, and also then walking through those 3 questions. So what would be the highest priority? How would you define success? And what is missing currently possibly from these strategies? love to open the floor now for any feedback that you might have.
Hi, this is Stephanie from Native American Connections.
Yeah.
Question, I didn't see where elected officials or high-level policy work was included in that. So I'm just wondering where you might envision that being incorporated, or maybe we, really state that out very explicitly on where elected officials and policy work can come into play.
Right, Stephanie, thank you for that question. That's a great point. We really do see that as part of the tactics, probably across all 5 of those areas. We know that we really need the leadership of elected officials, and we need them to be out front in this issue, but we need to give them the support, the data, the plan then that can be brought forward. So if there's any areas in particular where you think it would be particularly beneficial to have the support or the leadership of elected officials, I'd love to hear about that, and we'll make sure that that's really fully integrated into those tactics as they're being developed. And just a quick note on that too. I mean, it is really exciting to hear elected officials talking about this issue, and things like the mayor of Mesa had recently said in a public meeting that homelessness isn't just an issue, it's the issue from his perspective. And so being able to really hear that level of commitment to homelessness from our region's top leaders really pays testimony to the great work that all of you are doing, and really, I think, opens up a lot of potential for being able to move forward together as a region in this space. Thank you, Stephanie. Any other thoughts about the strategies? Any that might jump out to you as perhaps being among the higher priority? Anything else that might be missing? Okay. We will also be discussing this during the board meeting on Monday. So if thoughts occur to you after, we will have multiple opportunities to be able to engage in this dialogue with you. So, and I would also encourage you to please reach out at any time. Your feedback in this work is really important. We need to make sure that our work is aligning with all of the different efforts underway, and the work of the board is critically important in this space. And so we want to make sure that your fingerprints are all over these regional strategies, and that you have every opportunity to participate. So we will be discussing this then at the board meeting on Monday, particularly with the presentation by Homebase in terms of the research findings. And then June 10th is another opportunity for you to be involved, particularly as we move to implementation. But in between, at the May meeting then, we'll be offering the portfolio to you for action. And so if there's anything in that portfolio that that makes you kind of, that gives you pause or raises questions, please let us know. It's our goal to make sure that we address any ideas that you might have, and to make sure that those are fully represented in that portfolio. So,
hey, Amy, one more
yes.
actually quick question. So not so much, I guess it is kind of a priority. How is this group raising up the money that is coming in now, and the timeliness of talking about that and pushing for coordination? So it's not necessarily one of those 5.
No, great question, Jennifer. Thank you for that. So no, really, really important area of focus there. We can develop the best strategies in the world, but if we don't have the funding to implement them, then that was more of an academic exercise and not something that we can implement. So really critical to keep our eye on that. A couple of ways that we've been addressing that. One, very early in this process last fall, we had developed a chart that showed the different funding sources and the eligibility for each funding source, because we understand that particularly as communities might be entering this space for the first time, we want to make sure that they have full access to the array of different funding sources that could be brought to bear to help with the implementation of these strategies. So that was done very early on. At the MAG Management Committee meeting, that's just last week, and then we discussed it a little bit at the Executive Committee meeting this week, and then we'll be discussing it next week at Regional Council. We'd love to bring this in front of the, I think we are bringing this to the board too, is a municipal expenditure study. And that's a 2-part presentation around funding. So one is looking very specifically at what are the cities, towns, counties already spending to address homelessness, And then the other piece of that is Joanna Carr's great work from the Arizona Housing Coalition on looking at the COVID relief funding that's coming into the region and identifying how much of that is going to which community and what is it being used for. So Joanna and Sapna will be presenting that work to you, I believe at Monday's meeting. And that gives us an idea of what kind of funding is available right now. So that's another piece of it. The third piece, though, and I think this might get a little bit more to your point as well, is that right now we're undertaking a cost analysis. So we're looking at how many shelter beds do we need, how many permanent supportive housing beds, rapid rehousing beds, and then prevention services do we need right now? Do we project that we will need throughout the entire region? And then conducting a cost analysis on all of that. We're also through Homebase conducting a cost analysis on the strategies for the other areas, so outside of housing and shelter. How much would the other strategies in that portfolio cost to implement? So on the basis of those two different cost analyses, we're developing a regional funding target. And that regional funding target then would be presented to you next month as a portfolio moves forward for approval, to say, so that we can start to complete that picture, to say, this is what we're proposing to do as actions that the region can take in a really coordinated way. And by the way, this is how much it will cost. So then we can compare that against the funding that we have right now in the region, and then we can identify that gap. And there's different ways, of course, of addressing that gap. One is to raise more money, which we're also looking at opportunities for that, talking to different sources. And do we need to refine possibly the strategy? So we don't want to cut anything out. We'd much rather raise more funds and be able to coordinate the funding that is coming into the region in one way or another. So for example, one way that we can consider that is both Medicaid and Medicare both allocate funding for housing, because one of the biggest social determinants to health is housing. And so can we coordinate around that funding, and can we work together maybe better than we could if we're each doing this work on our own? And so we're considering that really important funding question from a couple different angles, but really look forward to, particularly during the development of the implementation plan, then being able to confirm this is what we're doing, this is how we're funding it, this is where it's going and when. Any other questions on that point or direction on that point?
No, thank you. I know it, especially all the money that's coming in, it's coming in so quickly, but like the city of Phoenix just put out 2 RFPs. They don't dovetail. So you could potentially be awarded CDBG funding for your facility, but not get the human services dollars for your services. Or you could potentially get your services, but not your building.
Oh boy.
So it's those sort of things that as a provider who needs 3 buckets filled to get something going.
Right.
And in the meantime, Department of Housing could have had money, but they didn't talk. It's like all of that. And here comes a CMS waiver out of Access. And it's like, y'all, the money's going to be spent and it's going to be gone. And we're all going to sit around going, gee, but we got a plan. So like, how fast can we execute and respond and at least get some of the money
absolutely
spent quickly and in a coordinated fashion on a regional level. So
yes, no, really great points, Jen. Thank you for raising that. That is a critical issue that we do have in mind. And we're reaching out to some of the key stakeholders right now to see what can we put into place to help with that coordination, because it is critical, and particularly for some communities too. Some communities have access to some of the funding, but maybe not all communities do. So then we need to be looking at other funding sources. When we're looking at the results from the municipal expenditure study, it was interesting because there are 3 main categories of funding that communities were using to address housing and homelessness. One, of course, is a formula-based federal funding. So that's very prescribed. There really aren't choices to make there. The second category of funding then is a federal funding with some discretion, like Community Development Block Grant. Communities can choose to spend that to address homelessness or choose to spend it on other worthwhile activities as well. Every community makes hard choices there. Can we make the case for more communities to spend more money to address homelessness, because it affects all of these other systems so significantly? The third area then is general funds, and that's all discretion, right? And so some communities were allocating a fair amount of their general funds to address homelessness, others not so much, and for different reasons. And every community has hard choices to make, particularly when it comes down to budgeting, because it's not just, do we want to spend it on this, it's, do we want to spend it on this and not spend it on that? Hard conversations to have for any community. And so we want to be able to provide that forum, to your point, Jennifer, around how can we coordinate? Because if one entity is funding, the capital, and another can provide the services, then it's both and, not either or. And we want to make sure that we're not putting people in that kind of either or kind of situation. So there are opportunities to do that. And definitely you can make the case for needing to do that more. Thank you. Really good points. Any other questions? Any other thoughts, guidance? We want to make sure that we're undertaking this work with your priorities in mind. So any communication that you can share in that regard really is helpful. Jackie, are you wanting to jump in?
Yeah, Amy, it's just a process question. And, this work is really important. And I mean, many of us are dedicating hours a week. And I know you all are immersed in it, so you have no sympathy for us, but that was a joke. But is there any way to expedite the process sessions? Like, for instance, the work that we're doing with home base, it seems to me some of that work could have been pre-populated for in the session. We respond to that, take away if we think we need to take it away, or add to it. And it would condense the amount of time that we need to engage. So I just throw that out as maybe a way of streamlining, not circumventing the work that we need to do, but just streamlining and focusing.
No, Jackie, thank you so much. And first, I do want to acknowledge all of you are incredibly busy. You're doing very important work that really requires your attention. And then we're filling up your dance cards, your calendars with additional meetings, which are important as well. But you're right. I mean, each of us to some extent has a finite amount of time. So we very much want to streamline the work as much as possible without circumventing anything. So I appreciate that feedback around the meetings, and certainly we'll reach out to home base right after this meeting and make sure that they have the benefit of that request, and that we have some time then to consider how we might accomplish that. For example, so we just had a session yesterday around services, and part of that was unemployment and part of it was on coordinated entry. Well, there are some folks coming into the meeting who were really just interested in the coordinated entry part, but we covered the employment services for the first hour. So could we segment the agenda then, and maybe so then people can attend just at the times when that particular item is going to be discussed. So that might be a way of helping to really target people's time and attention. In terms of the idea around pre-populating, I can certainly ask home base about that and see how we might be able to accommodate that request. Because you're right, we're not starting necessarily with a blank slate. There's been a lot of research already conducted, either through data analysis or through the outreach. And can we front load some of that information so that you can react to it and then use that as a jumping off point? So we'll definitely consider how we might be able to address that. Thank you. Great, really good feedback and questions. I appreciate the emphasis on funding and using time wisely. Anything else that we can do in this regard to really support your full engagement in this work? Okay. Excellent. I do want to thank you for your time today. We really appreciate you coming together. We know that we have a board meeting coming up on Monday, and really do encourage you, please, at any time, if you see something going kind of off the rails or sideways, please just let us know. We'd much rather fix it on the front end than have to do more on the back end. And if there's anything that you'd like to see us doing more of, then please do let us know. We're happy to take that on as well. So at this point, Madam Chairs, I'll hand it back to you and Sarah and Jim. Sarah?
Great. Thank you so much, Amy. The next thing on our agenda is to talk about next steps and what topics you would all like to discuss at the next strategy session, which is April 29th. After meeting with the board chairs, they have identified some areas that would be of interest on the next agenda. Some of those were the Built for Zero methodology, included how we can include that in the planning of the regional strategies. The other thing was going back to the charter revamp, and how do you want to go into the charter revamp, and what might that process look like for all of you? So these are just some ideas about potential agenda items for the 29th. And then also, if you're all ready to discuss diversifying the board, those were the 3 areas that the chairs thought would be nice to discuss. So with that, do these topics sound great to all of you? And what are some other items you'd like to discuss at that next strategy session?
Sarah, just to add on to what you were saying about governance charter, and reviewing that and really looking at our committee structures and how we want those to be set up, especially with a racial equity framework, and how we're going to implement that, and making sure we have plenty of seats for people with lived experience, as well as Black and Indigenous and people of color.
Thank you so much for those details, Tamara. Appreciate that. What else would folks like to see at our next strategy session? Or do these topics, are these topics okay to move forward with?
And please do let us know too, understanding that everyone's incredibly busy. So if there's a different way that we could approach this work, we're happy to look at any number of different mechanisms for that. So whether that's more strategy sessions, if it's maybe an ad hoc work group with a smaller subset, if it's taking care of it during the board meetings, we want to make sure that we're using your time in the best way possible, and appreciating that all of you have limited time. So please feel free to let us know, okay, we're done with the strategy sessions, let's go to ad hoc or board meetings. We're happy to accommodate whatever direction you might want to provide in that.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that.
If possible, Sarah, it would be nice to be able to have the mission, vision, values work group prior to the 29th, so we can just present it at the next board strategy, so it's ready to go for the April meeting.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
I know that's a quick turnaround, but it would be preferable.
We can do that. That sounds great, Ryan. Thank you.
Okay.
So then I'll put that on the agenda for the 29th as well. Okay, great. What else would folks like to see? Jennifer?
Sarah, question for you. So the data subcommittee is very targeted on the one-page memo about the development of regional homelessness data and analysis tools. And they've got a timeline that kind of wraps up a lot of their work, at least the initial foundation, by May. How does that information and those tools then start to feed in? Is that not strategy and more tactics, or is that strategy? Like, where do they intersect?
That is a really good question.
Well, one of the things I was going to ask Sarah sort of relates to, may help in answering this question, not content wise, but process wise. We've been talking a lot as a board and especially I think Tamara and I have been discussing a lot how we can involve the committees more, because the committees are really doing the work and they're on the ground, and they, even though we get written reports from them monthly, it's hard to keep the board really engaged with what the committees are doing and how the work they're doing, like what Jen has just mentioned, will actually impact the policy work that we're trying to accomplish. So I'm wondering if one of the things we could do at the next strategy session is to hear from, get a update from each of the committee chairs or sets of chairs to say, these are the 3 things that we've been tackling in the last year. Here's where we are in terms of timeline on them, and here's how we think they'll impact this work, or we're wondering how this will impact work. Like, if we could get our arms around the big pieces of work that each committee is focused on, I think that would help us. If we're not connected to that, then I really can't answer Jen's question. and vice versa. So I think this would be a really good opportunity to bring them forward, learn about what they're doing more integrally, get them in front of us. And then the other thing I'd like to know from them is, so like the top 3 things, or however many that is for each committee, that they're really focused on. And then like, what are their challenges? What are their opportunities and challenges? What is it they want to work on next and why? And what are their challenges in terms of either getting things done or having the board here? Are we not hearing them, or what do they need from us to move their stuff forward faster? What does that look like? Because then I think we would have a so much better idea of how we want to move forward in structuring how the board works and how the committees are part of that.
That sounds great.
I know that's a big ask, but I think that's part of the next work we need to jump into.
I agree. I think that's really important.
That sounds good to me. And Monday will be sort of a higher level update from the committees. And then the 29th will be just a lot bit deeper, answering those questions and all of that. Yeah, that sounds great. I've made note of that. Great. Keep it coming.
And I
So
guess I
right
should
now-
ask the committee chairs, since they're with us, like, does that ring true to you that you'd like the board to understand more about what you're doing and how we can implement your work more quickly? Or are you like, we don't even need that? Or do you feel connected to the board, not connected to the board?
From the data perspective, and of course I don't have a sample right away, but it seems like we're taking multiple steps, and it can take 60 days. So somebody did the presentation on just an info only for the closed loop referral system. We did it. It came to data. Oh, we love, yay. Then it goes to committee. Ooh, love, yay. And then it goes to board. And it's like, really? It took 3 steps? So some of those things that feel like they could be on a Google Doc, or, hey, everybody, check this out, bring your comments forward. So sometimes it's information, sometimes it's an action item. And it just feels like data's in a really great groove. Like we're working with we're working with Jeff. We've got Solari coming on board. We've got, Maggie, and there's some amazing stuff. So we're kind of over here. And I don't know what we need to be over here. And I would love us to know that whatever the board needs, we're helping push. So sometimes I don't know that we know. It seems to all be good, but it feels like it could be a little bit more efficient and effective and timely.
I'll agree with you on that, Jen. As far as the efficiency, whatever can be done to speed that process up would be great. I think also, to your point, it would be great to, I think that the coordinated entry subcommittee is starting to work on some things and starting to make a fair bit of progress. And I think as we progress in that, it would be kind of good to hear from the board that they're agreeing with the direction that we're all moving in, and so that we are spending our time and efforts and extra ad hoc meetings and work groups and all those sorts of things in a way that makes sense for the broader vision of things. So.
Thank you, Matthew. Great. And so would you all like this to be kind of the main meat of the 29th? It seems like there's a lot of discussion we can have just around this that will really help us to move forward in an efficient way. This is an excellent conversation. So right now, some of the ideas that I've got on the agenda are the Built for Zero methodology, and how that is included in the planning of the regional strategies, that conversation. Also, as Tamara said, discussing the process of the charter revamp, and that kind of will piggyback into the conversation around the committee structure, and how you would all like to structure that moving forward. And then that can go directly into sort of this bigger conversation, that Ryan said around, just asking committees the top 3 things that you're tackling, the timeline, how it impacts the work, and then really kind of getting a little deeper about how we can be more efficient in the processes from all the amazing hard work that are happening in the committee up to the board. And then of course, we've got the mission, vision, and values. Do we want to leave, that's 4 items right there. Would we like to talk about diversifying the board at another time, or like Amy said, that can be a separate ad hoc, or how would you all like to proceed? And should we try to fit in diversifying the board on the 29th as well? What do folks think? A lot of really important things to talk about.
I feel like maybe once we get our governance charter and our committee structures kind of thought through, then that can maybe inform how we want to, what we want to do with the board as well. So maybe it could all be part of that same conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then if we feel like we need a separate ad hoc or what that might look like, we can just tackle it then. Great. Any other things that need to be on the agenda for the 29th that have not been mentioned yet? Great, pretty packed agenda. I look forward to it. Thanks, everybody. This is a very constructive conversation. The next portion of our announcement, of our agenda, are announcements, and I will hand it over to your awesome co-chair, Tamara Wright, to give us a Built for Zero update. Tamara?
Thank you so much, Sarah. I first wanted to reiterate, I think I said this at the last 2 meetings, but we do have our learning session May 18th through 20th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Arizona time. Anyone and everyone is able to register. It's open, it's on Zoom, so there's no criteria about how many people can register. And again, everybody in Maricopa Regional COC is a member of Built for Zero, and you're welcome to all of our templates and all of our learning sessions, and you have access to everything. And then also the first 500 people to register get a really cool swag bag in the mail. So hurry up and register so you can get some cool stuff. And then the second thing I wanted to talk about was just that I'm sure you all have seen on social media and maybe in the news that Community Solutions was awarded a $100 million grant through the MacArthur Foundation, 100 and Change competition. And I just wanted to briefly talk about what that means for Maricopa Regional COC. So large cities was actually a huge part of our proposal. And we used a lot of the successes that happened in our large cities, specifically around veterans. Last year, even though we were in a pandemic, we had a 24% reduction in veteran homelessness, and our inflow went down, and our housing placements, even though they went down, they still kind of maintained a steady pace. So, but with that, in our proposal, we said that at least half of the money was going to go directly to community support, whether that be hiring additional people to help implement regional strategies and help implement the Built for Zero methodology on the ground, also flexible funding, and also real estate. I think we've been talking about trying to get a building in Phoenix for a long time. We're looking right now for real estate. So point is, it's going to be really great for Maricopa Regional COC. We're going to have flexible funding. We're going to have more people working, and we're going to have hopefully some acquisition of real estate. So that's all going to help in our plan. So I just wanted to say that and make sure that you guys knew that that money is going directly to the work. So it's really exciting, and it's really good news for Maricopa Regional COC. And that's all I had.
Wow, congratulations to you, Tamara, and everybody else. That's so amazing. Great. Are there any other announcements that folks would like to share right now? Happenings, great news, anything at all? Now is your time to share.
I think I would want us to say we appreciate all the work you all are doing on staff. I mean, you've done some very heavy lifting, and, I, for one, I think the rest of us are all very grateful for the work you've done, and also for the opportunities to include our input as well. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Jackie. It's really our honor to work alongside all of you. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that, Jackie. The team that we have here addressing homelessness, Sarah, Julie, Amy's hard work, and we've really had a lot of support from staff in other divisions at MAG as well, and they're just doing a phenomenal job. So thank you all. And then I was also just monitoring the chat and wanted to thank you, Jackie. You had noted that you can make 4 computers available for people in the East Valley. So thank you so much for that, for the lived experience session.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. That's lovely. Any other announcements that folks would like to share right now before I hand it over to your co-chairs to close us out? Anything left to say? Any announcements? Okay, Tamara and Ryan, I'll hand it over to you to close us out. Thank you all so much.
All right. Well, thanks so much, everyone, for being here. Jim, great to see you again. I hope you're recovering well. And committee chairs, please, if you do, I guess I'll say communicate with MAG staff about whether we hope that you will continue to want to participate with us, because we feel like you're the link to the rest of the world. But if you have any concerns like, oh, I hate this, please let MAG staff know so we can find a way that's comfortable for you to participate with us. But if not, I would say we're probably would like for you to continue participating with us, if that would be okay. So other than that, hi, Liz. I see you down there. And just thanks everybody for being here. And thanks, MAG staff. And look forward to seeing you all on Monday, hopefully.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a
You
great
too.
day.
Take care.
Hi, Liz.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Your
Thank you.
face. That's okay.